Greetings and welcome back to Yoga PodClass. We are on our series with boundaries coach Kirsten Phillips. Welcome back, Kirsten. We are so excited to keep having this conversation about boundaries. Last week we talked about saying no, and we left off on no and why it's so important as we lead into today's sacred yes. And it's not about compliance or obligation, people pleasing, but I want to circle back on something really important that Kirsten and I were talking about before we jumped on here. And that is why no is so important, and a little bit about what that feels like in the body. Kirsten, you said it so beautifully. I'm going to ask you again. Why is the no so important, and how does that lead into our sacred, most aligned yes?
Yeah, so the no is really important because no is really like a door opening. And and that might sound totally backwards,
Yeah.
you
Wait,
know?
what? It's a door opening?
Yeah, but when you are actively saying no to the things that are not in alignment, that are not working for you, that need to change, if you're saying no to those, then you are opening a door wide for all the yeses that you need, the things you want to say yes to, the things that you may not even know about that are going to be your aligned yes. So that's why it's so important to say no to the things that you don't want or are not aligned with.
I love that. It seems simple enough, right? But it is an embodied practice. And we learn what our no is from the wisdom that's held inside of our body and tuning in. And I'll ask you to do it here with me. Tune in with our breath into the nose, relax the jaw, soften between the eyebrows, permission to do so. And just be present with this conversation and noticing that felt regulated consent of the body that is the sacred yes. Pausing, lengthening that exhale, and tuning in to a little bit about, of course, our yoga philosophy. Satya is truth, ahimsa is non harm. And we hold those pillars in our nose, in our yeses. A true yes will never violate those two principles of truth and non harm. Neuroscience backs this. A regulated yes emerges from a ventral vagal state, a softness in the chest, ease in the breath, and expansion without pressure. Contrasting to that forced yes, that one that feels tight, fast, or draining. And just celebrating your awareness to even tuning into what that might feel like inside of the body. And even if right now you're not noticing anything, it's just numbness or it's just my words landing in your presence, letting that noticing be enough. Welcoming you into this space. This is the Yoga PodClass with Chelsea Lael Kennedy, Kirsten Phillips, the Boundaries Coach, and here we are kicking off our next conversation about yes. Kirsten, we've been having these conversations that are often me asking you about what you do as a boundaries coach, how you say no, what you say no to. And I want to touch back a little bit on the no's. So I think some of the best ways that we can relate to and share what we do is through our personal experience. And what makes us good at what we do is because we walk our walk, we walk our talk, right? Both and. So, what are some of the key things that maybe you started saying no to and that you unfolded to being able to say yes to other things that maybe weren't on your radar? And this could be when you first started on your journey, just let the listeners know, or if it was somewhere in between, in the middle. The journey's never over, so we're always in the middle, right? But or if you're kind of where you're presently at, and like, oh, I'm actually just saying no, and because I said no to this, this happened. I want to hear it. I want to hear it all.
Well, thank you, Chelsea. Yeah, the first thing that popped to mind was something that I started saying no to after I became a yoga instructor. And like that becoming a yoga instructor was a pivotal moment, even though I didn't know it at the time, of starting to understand my boundaries. And I wanted to share this particular story just because, again, it's kind of one of those like surprising things, I think, like with the no opening doors, in that one of the things I started saying no to was going to family events. Not all of them, but the ones that conflicted with my yoga practice or the things that I was really wanting to do that I knew would serve me better. And so, yeah, I wasn't missing any like major birthday parties or, major celebrations, but there were some smaller family things like a brunch or, a lot of brunches I think I missed. But that was really, really important for me because I recognized at that time that when I missed my regular yoga classes, I was not a happy person. Like I wasn't a fun person to be around, like at all. And so that was one of those kind of like no and yes moments. Like I had to say no to family things, which is one of the things that I think is the hardest to say no to because, you love your family. There's often obligation or there's, routine or, what's the word? Where you do, not routine, but like where you do something again and again.
Ritual?
Tradition.
Tradition. Yeah. Yep.
Tradition. Right? Like, I made it, I made it to all the weddings. I made it to all the major birthday party things. Like I didn't miss those. Those were important. But kind of the smaller day-to-day, weekly kind of family things that would come up that were in conflict with the things that I needed to restore my system, I started saying no to those. And it was hard. Like my family really didn't get it at first. And I kind of had to just keep saying, no, I can't make it. No, I can't make it. No, I can't make it. Like I already have this thing that I need to do for me. If we do this on a different day, I can probably make it, but I can't make it on that day at that time because I'm doing this other thing for me.
And there's so much about our family that we kind of grow in our identity, and then when we go through these boundary setting experiences, right, we really kind of find some of our true identity that's found outside of those familial expectations and traditions, and it can be kind of taboo, especially if you're the first one in your family who's kind of exploring that. um and what an honor that you continue to choose yourself in a loving way, because as you respected yourself, you set and gave that permission for others to do the same. Hey, yeah, if there's something that's more suited for what your needs are in your greater good, permission to do that. And it's not saying don't love you, because I really, really do. But I love you so much that I'm going to do this for me.
Exactly.
So how is your family, how have they maybe softened around this new boundaried Kirsten?
Yeah, it means that they know that I won't always be there. Saying that I'm like, "Oh, but that sounds bad." But not in the that I'm not there for them, but that I'm not going to be at every single invitation. Like I'm not saying yes to every invitation. And that's a normal expectation that I'm going to show up when I can 100%. I'm going to be there and enjoy it and have a wonderful time. You're not going to see me at every event.
I love the and I love the, oh, I lost it. It was something you said. I'm going to slow it down and invite our listeners to breathe and soften with us. That I'm coming back to permission and the knowing. How did you know that it was like actually your yes tipped over here and you can feel yourself pulling away? Like it's scary, it's fearful, it's hard, right? You said.
It is really hard. Yeah. It definitely took practice, I would say. Like it wasn't something that just automatically flipped a switch. And I'm like, oh, I got it now. I know exactly. It was really feeling like trial and error. Because
Yeah.
there were times that I showed up for family events and then I felt resentful the rest of the day. That really was my biggest clue, was like, I just was cranky and, yeah, resentful, guilty, frustrated. All those emotions were flooding my system the rest of the day. And that was like, okay, wait, why was that? And then was it pivoting and realizing, oh, well, because I gave up this thing that makes me feel better and grounded and whole. And instead, I went and because I tend to be more of an introvert too. And so, and instead of doing like something for me in an introvert kind of way, I went and was very extroverted and social, and it just didn't, my energies didn't match. And so it's kind of the, how I felt afterwards was what was cluing me in. And then I would kind of puzzle it back, is how I started to figure that out.
And with yoga practice, right, that self-reflection, that inner awareness, even that witnessing self kind of from an outside perspective are all parts of the practice. And they come online in different ways and in different times throughout the journey. And it's so beautiful. And that was one of the things you had said earlier too, was that you were showing up to the events that you were able to go to more fully present, more fully connected, and able to enjoy. And I'm glad that you hit on that part where, like, when you didn't go, when that yes was kind of forced or obligatory, that you felt the difference. That's a huge contrast, and what an awareness. And I think that so many times, myself included, this is why this is, ask me how I know, right? We override uh those things because out of the obligation, out of the tradition, out of the sense of, "Oh, I have to do this." I guess that's what obligation is, right? Um and learning to not override those subtle cues, because when we ignore those cues, like, our body and brain just we stop cueing ourselves, like, oh, and you just show up and you're grumpy, right? And then you adopt it as your personality. Well, I'm just a grumpy person. But if we said no more often, right, we're able to not carry the disappointment of others when we say no. Yeah, that we'd get to show up with authenticity, fully present, fully enjoying. And back to, how has your family softened or grown with Kirsten through her boundary settings and choosing what is best in her greatest good and highest alignment?
Well, one of the things now is that sometimes there's surprise when I do show up, and that joyful surprise. So it's like I'm welcomed in even more than I would be on a normal day because it's exciting that I'm there, and that feels really good too,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
So good. So they've grown with you and they accept you and they loved you even though it was hard at first.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so good. Makes my heart so happy. Thank you for sharing. And as we share here, like, invitation for our listeners to soften. And inhaling, breathing in, widening the back body, and just imagining things. They don't even have to be anything specific, but just an image of what an opportunity looks like to you, right? How is it floating into your space right now? What image or symbol do you give opportunity? And can you see the difference? Maybe sometimes the symbol comes in really bold and brilliant and beautiful. And maybe other times the symbol comes in faintly or dingy or just not as bright. And taking that time to notice the difference between the two, and which ones of those symbols are the ones that are your yeses, your sacred yes, your aligned, lit up, beautiful, brilliant. Yes, I am present here for this. And which ones get to pass on through? No, thank you. No, thank you. Noticing where your body leans in. and noticing when your body subtly pulls away. Those are the subtle shifts I invite you to notice throughout this practice and your days to come. And anchoring in maybe a couple mantras. My body tells the truth. Breathing that in, allowing that to wash over your body and being. Eyes can be open or closed, but gentle in your gaze. And perhaps another mantra that says, my yes is allowed to be slow, right? Taking those moments before responding. Is this my truest, most authentic, absolutely yes, I'm in? Noticing what that absolutely yes, I'm in feels like inside of your body. Nodding your head yes in agreement with those things. And that invitation to shake your head, no thank you to the detours, distractions, displacements. And returning to this space, looking around, being fully present with what is. Welcome back, right? We're still here. The other thing I wanted to hit in on was all of the things that you're saying yes to, Kirsten. You've developed these boundaries, this filtration system of, nope, this doesn't meet my standard. Nope, I'm not doing this. Yes, I'm doing this for me. And what has surprised you on this journey that you're like, wow, I didn't know this was going to be a yes that I would have the opportunity to say yes to?
Well, the first thing that popped to mind, really, Chelsea, is like how we met.
Yes.
Because because it's not a one time thing. So I social media has turned out to be this amazing way for me to connect with strangers that I would not have met in person because we don't live in the same place. And it's become this amazing way, especially of finding collaborations, of finding clients, of just and my own sign to myself now of yes is when I have a conversation with one of these amazing humans is that I get teary, like I start crying a little bit or a lot, depending on what's
Yes.
happening. And it's this like emotional like those are my like strongest yeses. And that happened, Chelsea, on our first phone call together, you know, because listeners, Chelsea literally DM'd me a stranger on Instagram, and here we are. That's how we got to this space. And in that first conversation, yeah, I was like literally crying. And then I think when we were planning out the podcast, I started crying again. I was like, okay, yeah, this is a yes. And yeah, I've connected with folks that live in other countries, you know, other states. Like it's amazing that being open to making these connections. I think that's been this really magical place that yeses have like flowed in the most loving way.
That's so beautiful. You were, it is so true. And seen her Instagram, I was like, yes, right? Boundaries. That is, I need to collaborate with somebody who's talking about boundaries. This girl's talking about boundaries. And what a joy it has been. Like my aligned yeses are like excitement. Yes, I'm in. I've got goosebumps. And yes, teary. Like, oh my gosh, it's so good. How fun, right? That we get to align with a life like that. I've had to say no, I learned along the way things that I wanted to say no to, right? I knew that I was going to say no to things that didn't allow me to show up as myself, that they had this persona that they expected me to be or portray, and it's like, it was hard to fit in a box. So I know that if I'm approached by a collaborator and I feel like they want to have me fit a certain box, that I'm gonna say no. And it's not because it's not a great project. I loved those projects that I was a part of. I just want to show up as who I am, that authentic, yes, the girl with tattoos, with her half of her head shaved, and she's really smart and she knows what she's talking about. Just kidding. Right? Because I've showed up and I've done the work and I've said no to the things. And so many times it looked like for me, um, saying no to the group activities and then finding that fine line of like, am I isolating or am I in my creativity of solitude and serenity in this solitude? And it was a fine line, right? Because sometimes it was like, okay, um I do need to be surrounded by people, right? And finding that balance and that rhythm, trial and error. What and I really liked how you said it, right? When I would say yes to something and then I noticed how I felt while I was there or afterwards, that's how we tune into, oh, that wasn't my most authentic yes. And I want to be really careful in saying there are things in our lives that are obligatory in a sense, right? There are things that I'd rather not do. One of them that my dog, we switched their dog food and it got runny guts. Poor thing, right? I don't love cleaning up dog poop. Don't. But I'm going to do it, right? And there are those yeses that feel like we want them to be a no. And sometimes on this journey, and I'm sure it's going to happen again. I'm not there right now, but I'm going to hit that place of imposter syndrome, if you will, right? Like, who am I to say that I know this? Who am I to lead people? Who am I to tell people about boundaries? Right? Who am I? And a time when, that ego will maybe want to say no and keep us small in a way that shrinks our expansion. That is actually our authentic, true yes. And I love that we're both yogis, so the practice of yoga is deeply entwined in our teachings. I just know this, that it's getting beneath those layers, right? There are subtle layers of our being, and taking that time to quiet and really tap in and breathe through into our being and those layers, we're going to find those hidden yeses that consciously sound like a F no. Like, right? Like, I'm never doing that. Um, so maybe a challenge, and I'm going to do this to myself. I'm going to make a list of the things that I've always said that I will never do, right? One of those first one things was when I went to college. I was like, I am never going to the University of South Dakota. I'm never going to do it. Never going to do it. I'm not going here. It was the only school I applied for. So, yeah, it's definitely shown up in my life. And even now, so my degree is actually in business economics. Way different than a yoga training. I'm in yoga therapy school right now. And uh I love how business is at play here too, right? I have a yoga business, you have a coaching business. So economics of course makes sense. But what I'm most grateful for now is that thing that I said I was never going to do, that I followed myself and did that, followed through with a yes that was hidden underneath. And I have this economics degree. And how cool, because we are in this time of data and information, that actually an economics degree is really in demand. People want data analysts. And I'm like, there was a sacred yes in there that actually consciously came out as a I'm never doing that. So I'm challenging myself and anybody else who'd like to join and leave a comment here on what's something that you said you would never do that you did do. And that also went on other things, ways that I let myself down, right? I don't drink anymore. I drink too many times, right? And honestly, I'm so excited about the things that they're coming out with in science. Like, alcohol is a class one carcinogen, right? It causes cancer. It is a neurotoxic poison, really. And our body cannot even process fat weight loss when it is processing out alcohol, right? My little plug, ahimsa, right? To do no harm. And that was part of my journey was like, you know what? I don't need alcohol anymore. And it did lead me to do things that I was like, I would never do that. And there I was never nevering. And I found myself doing those things, right? And coming through these practices, even when you're setting boundaries and you're saying no to the things, and that's creating rifts and ruffles in your relationships with self and others, and you're staying true because you want to say yes to these things over here, right? It's noticing those subtleties, but then also one other question I have for you in this conversation, Kirsten, is were there some yeses that you were afraid to say yes to that maybe felt like a no, that you are so glad you're like, that was a yes, and I'm so glad it was a yes?
Absolutely. Although, of course, in this moment, I'm like, but now I'm trying to think of an actual example. And yeah, isn't that interesting? Because I'm like, no, I know there are things that I felt
Maybe
that yeah, that I should say no to, but that I knew I really wanted. What were you gonna add to that, Chelsea?
I was gonna say maybe tapping into the feeling of what that was, and maybe that'll bring back the memory.
That's a good idea. Yeah, yeah, because the feeling is more of yeah that it's wrong for me to want this, that I shouldn't, or there's guilt. Guilt's definitely a big part of that. And I'm trying to think. It's funny, like I mean, what's coming to mind isn't a specific example, but it feels like relatable
Hmm.
in like going on a trip like by myself to a place that I want to go to that maybe my husband doesn't want to go to. Something like that where it's like I can be a really terrible traveler and I have been for most of my life because I have a lot of anxiety. But through my boundary setting, I'm like, "Oh wait, I've become a much better traveler now. I'm not the anxiety induced mess. I still have my moments,
Yeah.
but it is a lot easier for me to travel than it used to be. And I think a big part of that is having those boundaries and now kind of giving myself that permission that it is okay for me to travel, without my partner. That we don't have to do the same things all the time. I think that's also something that can be an obligation that we need to do things together with, our partners or the people we really care about. But sometimes you, yeah, don't want to do those things. Or maybe sometimes you really do, but you're afraid to tell them that that's something you want to do. Like, I feel like it can go like both ways.
Hmm.
And your body is so smart and there to support you. Noticing like for me it's like really clenching is like I've been triggered, like I feel scared in some way or there's anxiety coming in. But like that open expansive feeling for me usually like across my belly and across my chest is like, oh wait, this is something I do want to do. So for me it's kind of like that opening and the closing, like if you think about in yoga like a cat and cow type pose, like coming into that cow or to cat is more of a protective place. And if you think about it, like a cat arching its back like that is protecting itself. It's usually hissing and making those noises. Whereas when you think about a cow, because in cow pose you lower your belly and you expand, it's like, a cow mooing, like it's kind of a fun sound. I mean, it's this deep, like almost like an ohm in a way. I just, the way it travels, those two poses have this different sensation. And for me, that's really similar to how I feel my yeses and my nos, is that difference.
And it's having that space on the mat to practice it and feel it and breathe it and be it, that it does impact how you walk in your regular life. And we're not even going to get into the energetic side of things, like how going to your yoga practice somehow quantum detangles messes in your life. It is wowing. And I really appreciate all of the feeling sensation, right? Because that is our body telling us things, and we do override it often. And that's why when I'm cueing saying you may notice nothing at all, that numbness was a place where I started. I didn't feel. I didn't have the mind body connection, and there's still certain areas that I'm getting there. Um, in our I have a embodiment series where we talked with a dental hygienist who's trauma informed in all the ways, and we talked about pelvic floor health, right, and how it's connected to our jaw. Those are areas that I'm just now getting to the layers and depths of. She asked me, she's like, well, what does a pelvic floor relaxed pelvic floor feel like? And I'm like, I am working on that. I don't know yet, right? But I'm closer. I've had some dry needling. Things happen, right? But we learn the things, right? We learn through experience, we learn through others. I definitely could not have done it alone, even though I probably wanted to. I had that introvert side of me that's like, yeah, if I can just ohm it away all by myself and no one has to see me in my mess or my distress, sign me up twice, right? That's that self-protective. But life is messy. And this permission to be messy, to be imperfect, even dropping the shame, and then asking yourself in your daily life, does this expand or contract me? Taking a moment to breathe into it. What does expansion feel like? Kirsten said it like opening across the belly and the chest. And it doesn't have to be the same for you. Those are just identifier cues. Maybe expansion feels warm to you. Contract. What does it feel like to contract? What are those things that you recoil away from? Even if you're not doing it that dramatically in a setting, can you notice your subtle recoil and you're like, oh, right? Another question to ask yourself in a moment. Do I feel more alive after doing this? And what does alive feel like? And one last question for us today. If I trusted my body, that's a big one. If I trusted my body, what would I choose? Do you have any final reflective thoughts before we close?
I just love those last two questions that you posed, Chelsea. They're just so powerful. And giving the permission to even ask. It can be a huge step. And to just say that even if, no answer is coming to you immediately, like that's an answer too.
Yeah. It's all information. And one of the things that was neat, and I love that you cue on it right away, is that going to the sensation, because the body really does hold the memory, the wisdom, the book written in the 80s, The Body Keeps the Score, right? The information's there. And what's really beautiful about yoga is you can process things without having to get into the story of the trauma and drama. And oftentimes it makes such a beautiful, what's the word I'm looking for? Complementary tool to therapy, right? The therapy can often be the space where we talk about it, but how do we get it out of the nervous system? How do we get it out of the body? And for me, I see Kirsten shaking her head, yes, right? It was getting in the body, that somatic awareness, and really just being present with what is. So in this work, you heard her say it's hard, right? It is feeling things like resentment, rejection, guilt, right? And being conscious when you're feeling those things, naming it to tame it, being present with it while it lasts, even when it doesn't feel so great. but it really opens up the door to the things that you want to be holding, right? We can get rid of all the rocks. What's left are our gemstones. And I'll let Kirsten here a little bit talk about her process as the boundaries coach. And then we'll close out and we will see you guys next time. Thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, as the boundaries coach, I help exhausted humans set those healthy boundaries and stop saying yes when you mean no. Like finding that important distinction, like what we've talked about in the previous episode and in this one, that sacred yes and that sacred no. They are both so important. And that is very much what I do in my work as a boundaries coach. And I have a program coming up that starts mid-February called Boundaries and Balance. It's an online group coaching program designed to take you from, I don't even know what my boundaries are, to fully embodying them and being able to put them into practice without the guilt.
I love that. How long is the course?
It's 10 months, which could sound like a lot. I just want to preface, like, it could make you panic. And like I said, I work with exhausted humans, which means I know you're busy. And so we start with a 6-week container to give you the foundational tools that you need. And then from there, we just meet once a month because that gives you the time and the space you need to practice, to implement, to try things on. We come back, we do feedback and we'll work through, okay, what's working, what's not. Okay, let's try this now. So that by the end of the 10 months, you're like, no, I got this. I can do this. I can hold my boundaries. I can say no and not feel guilty about it.
I love that. It sounds like you're putting the scaffolding in place, right? You've got all the support and then you dial it back and you really lean into people's resilience, strengths and that like that inner glow that they are capable, right? They can do this. And what's so cool is we have mirror neurons. So when you see Kirsten doing it, when you see the other people that are in that group doing it too, right? We grow better together. And I love that. Um I have a year-long program called The Anchor, right? So I want to talk about when she said 10 months, right? And that notice how you felt when she said that, right? Does that big commitment or length of time, what does it make you feel? Um, I love working with people one on one. I love working with people in group settings. My latest is the Oceans of You recalibration experience, and it is offered in my app as a drip content. And it's going to take you through the koshas, your layers of being. And then it's going to take you through your energy centers called chakras. And then it takes you through the elements that our existence is made up of. And it's just been a beautiful journey. It does have 21 different 15-minute somatic drops throughout however long it takes you. I had originally designed the program to be 33 days, but I had to stay and honor the tide, if you will, in the nervous system. And I realized that 33 days was too much to do that much work. So, what's really great about it being in the app is that it's all packaged right there for you. When you do the first somatic drop, the second one will open and you come back to it and you continue to return to the practice. And that is self-paced, but it has a group container, a community feature. I'd just love to have you there if you're looking to kind of just dip in and see what this is about. Otherwise, I do have one-on-one packages. I'd love to connect with you one-on-one and tailor where you're at. Those packages are 3, 6, and 10 packages, and you can find me on Instagram at CLAEL11. I thank you all for being here. Thank you for staying present with this conversation. I'm excited to see where our conversation continues. I honestly don't even remember what the next one's about, but I know that we have at least one or two more. And I see Kirsten. I want to keep talking. Can we just keep talking? Because I think, the things that we've talked about today, it's like, ooh, there's a rabbit hole we can go there. There's a rabbit hole we can go there. So I think that we have, so much that we could say, but we also welcome, like, what are your questions? What are your struggles? What is it with boundaries or even yoga that's intimidating? Most people are like, I don't want to do all that work. Well, I'm here to tell you that actually a lot of my yoga is breath work and sitting, because so many of us in the Western world do so much. And the invitation here, I see you shaking your head. Yes, Kirsten, right? She sees it too. And again, I'm guilty. Ask me how I know, right? I notice these things in myself, and that's why I get to call them out in other people. In a way that's fun and playful and invitational, right? It's for the people who are looking to a shift, right? How can they learn and go deeper in themselves to express bolder and more brilliantly in themselves who they are without shrinking away, without having to, as Brene Brown, puff, shrink or puff up, right? We're just present in our fullness and wholeness. So, thank you so much, Kirsten. We will see you next time. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please put them in our comments below or send us a message. Like, both of us are actually very responsive in our uh, direct messages, and you're actually going to get a real person, not a bot. Maybe someday I'll have a bot, but I have no bot. You get a real person. And I think that there's something very touching about that when you get to see and communicate with the person that's working with you. So thank you for being here, Kirsten.
Yeah, thank you, Chelsea. Yes, and if you want to connect with me further, I'm on Instagram at Love and Live Wellness, and my website is loveandlivewellness.com.
I love that. Thank you.